The University of Alabama and the University of Texas are two of the blue bloods when it comes to college football. But which one is the real blue blood? The answer may surprise you.
Are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. Jimmy, how are you today?
Good. Back behind the wheel. Like I responded to someone on Twitter, it's like an episode of The Slow and the Furious.
It really is, and I love the way you keep your hand on the steering wheel as if you're driving. You need a fake background going past you. Want to thank Upside for being the sponsor of this particular of this podcast. They're the sponsor of Upside. I have the Upside app. I'm telling you, I'll tell you about it later. It's great. It's a good way just to earn a little bit of pocket change just for doing something like filling up your car with gas. I mean, it's so easy. But we'll talk about Upside here in a minute. Jimmy, what I want to do now, I want to talk a lot about Alabama, Texas, the two programs. We're going to do our predictions for tomorrow's podcast, but also want to talk about some of the players on the roster from both states on the respective teams, and then do a little recruiting talk. Andrew Bone from On 3, who's with you guys there at On 3, did a great write-up on some recruiting stuff. But right now, let's just talk about Alabama and Texas. Jimmy, do you know how many Heisman trophies Texas has?
Woo! I'm going to say 3.
They've got 2, which I was shocked by. I would have guessed 4.
Ricky Williams and Earl Campbell?
Earl Campbell and Ricky Williams, yeah, I would think.
Yep.
Right.
Guess so.
Now, here's the other thing. I'm pulling this up on Winsipedia. By the way, if you've never been to Winsipedia, it's pretty cool. You can compare and contrast various teams. And you think of Texas, and everybody's like, Texas is back. Texas is back. Texas is one of the blue bloods. And they are, I mean, brand-wise and everything else-wise. And I guess by definition, because they're in the top 10 of most everything. But listen to this. All-time winning percentage, Alabama is 2nd, Texas is 7th. National championships, Alabama's 1st, Texas is 16th. Do you know how many national championships they have? You can't be having these big pauses. 4.
Well, I was trying to get it right. 3.
Just throw out a number. I don't even care what it is. I'm using this for shock value.
I was 1 off. 3.
I'd rather you be very wrong for the shock value, by the way, for the goodness of the podcast.
44.
Bowl games. Alabama's been to 75.
How many national championships? I didn't catch the national championships. How many?
4.
Oh, okay. So I missed by 1. Okay.
Yeah. Conference championships. Even though Texas has played in an easier conference since the dawn of time, Alabama's got 33 conference championships. Texas has 30. Now, I assume the 33 counts like wasn't Alabama in some Southern Conference or whatever, like before the SEC, right?
Yeah, but that wasn't very long. And Texas was in the Big 8. You know, how hard could that be? There were only 8 of them. I mean, 8 teams in the whole conference. That's why it was the Big 8. They were also in the South Conference, and famously the greatest conference ever, the Southwestern Conference. And at least half of those schools were on probation every year. I mean, it would change out as to who was on probation, but half of the schools were ineligible for championships each and every year. So they should have won a bunch of those.
I don't think Texas was ever in the Big 8.
Yeah, I think
really?
So. For sure. Oh, maybe not. You could be right.
I think
you're probably
so.
right.
You're thinking of Oklahoma. And
so after the Southwestern Conference imploded, then they joined. By then, was it Big 12?
Big 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the Big 12 used to be the Big 8, sort of.
You're ruining both aspects of this thing.
Sort of like when Garth Brooks became a country rock act. He ruined them both.
Chris, what's his name? Chris, what was his name? Chris Gaines.
Chris Gaines. Yeah, that was just wow. That was the new Coke of music.
All-time wins, Alabama is second with 943. Texas is sixth. Consensus All-Americans, Alabama's got 83. Texas has 61. Heisman winners 4-2. We talked about draft picks. Alabama 391, Texas 352. Weeks in AP poll, Alabama 842, Texas 748. Weeks at number one, Alabama 138, Texas 45. I guess, some people may listen to this and go, this is why are you just spouting off this stuff? Because when you say Texas, their branding is so awesome that you think they should be the best that's ever been. But we have over 100 and some odd years proving they're not going to be that. They are a top 10 program of all time, but they ain't number one, and they aren't really close. And the what I'm saying is, boy, it's worse than I thought. Now, let's also be fair. Alabama probably would be closer to all these Texas rankings, if not behind them, if it weren't for the Nick Saban era. We sort of meandered about in the weeds there for a while ourselves. But anyway, I just thought these were kind of interesting because if you think about Alabama versus Texas and you say, well, which one is the better program all time? Outside of Alabama fans, maybe outside of the Southeast, I should say, people will probably go, oh, Texas. I mean, Texas, right? I mean, why not Texas? And then you're talking about historically, and then you look at these numbers, and the numbers, Alabama wins all of them. I mean, it's really not that close. All right, Jimmy, we're going to go ahead and tell everybody about Upside here because I love this app. It's a lot of fun. It's so easy to download. Look, when you go to the pump, I know you're cringing, or you're getting an eye-popping check at your favorite restaurant. Those can suck too, there's no doubt. Inflation is hitting us all where it hurts, and it really hurts. That's why I started using Upside. Upside is an incredible app for anyone who buys gas, groceries, or dines out. With every purchase, I'm earning cash back thanks to Upside. I'm telling you, I've used it. There's a Nothing But Noodles right by my house. It is part of the Upside program. I get like 7% every time I go there. It's awesome. There are like 2 Circle Ks. Yeah, I'm telling you, there are 2 Circle Ks on my route from Birmingham to Lake City to work. And I always seem to stop at them and use the Upside app because it gives me anywhere from like 3 cents back a gallon to 15 cents back a gallon. And you say, okay, well, what's the big deal? I'm just saying it all adds up. You got to get gas anyway, especially guys like me. So that's always on the road. To get started, download the free Upside app. Use my promo code LOCKED. That's promo code LOCKED. And get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Next, claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside. Check in at the business. Pay as usual with a credit card or debit card and just get paid from that. It'll come like in a couple of days. It's so easy. In comparison to credit card rewards or loyalty programs, you can earn 3 times more cash back with Upside. Upside users are earning more than $1 million every week. That's probably why they have 4.8 star rating on the App Store. Download the free Upside app and use your promo code LOCK to get $5 off or more on your first purchase of $10 or more. That's $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more using promo code LOCKED. Go to Upside, just get it at the Apple Store. It's super, super easy. You'll absolutely love it. And again, it doesn't cost a thing. So, I mean, what's the harm here? Jimmy, before we get into talking about the rosters, the guys Alabama has on the roster from Texas and then vice versa, I told everybody the other day I bought a car from Eric Washington, and to prove I'm not a liar, well, I just showed the wrong picture. That's not a shock that I did that. Here's a picture of me and Eric Washington. It's not the best picture in the world, but it's me standing next to Eric Washington buying my car. I love my car. I appreciate Eric Washington, great American, former University of Alabama standout. I think he still owns a few, or at least top 5 records, maybe in 3-point percentage or 3-point field goals made or something like that.
Where did you buy this car?
Town and Country Ford in Bessemer.
And Eric Washington is a car salesman there.
He is.
Interesting.
It is.
No, great player. He was from Pearl or Brandon, Mississippi.
Pearl. Yeah.
That's where I lived when I went to law school.
Oh, wow. Well, all right, Jimmy, I want to talk a little bit about the rosters here. I pulled up Alabama's roster because I just thought it'd be interesting to see how many guys are from Texas on that roster. I guess it'd be easier to start with the number of guys from Alabama on Texas's roster. That's 1, Justice Finkley. I mean, look, I'm not. Texas has a ton of Texas dudes on their roster, obviously, and they don't need to go outside of their boundaries very often to get great dudes. But the state of Alabama has some dudes, and if I were Texas, I'd probably try and be a little more active over here. But that's just me. Now, here's some interesting names. Of course, Jason McClellan, the running back. He was at one time committed to Oklahoma, but he is from Aledo, Texas.
Right.
And then, of course, Jalen Milroe, who was committed to the University of Texas. Also from Aledo is JoJo Earl, who unfortunately won't be able to play in this game. That's sort of a bummer. But my point is, I'm looking down to Jacoby Boykins, who apparently is a walk-on. Kendrick Blackshire, again, who looks more like a cartoonish professional wrestler than he does a football player. So
he got in the game late. He played late. He played late in the fourth quarter at inside linebacker, not teams.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Then, of course, the Brockermeyer brothers are on the team.
The Brock
and
Bros.
Brock Bros. Jaden Roberts, also from Houston, Texas, along with Damian George from Houston, Texas.
Exactly like DJ. He's Fluker's doppelganger. Jaden Roberts. He looks just like him.
So here's the thing. How much better would Texas be with those dudes I rattled off on their team? I mean, they'd be a lot better, wouldn't it?
A lot. Yeah, there's no doubt Alabama has made hay in Texas. Now, with NIL stuff, I mean, I think one of the realities is it's going to be harder for Alabama to sign kids out of Texas because, as we all know, Texas Longhorns and Texas A&M are big spenders. They with big collectives that spend a lot of money. I think it's harder for us to get into Texas now than it was during that period, right before NIL and right before Texas and Texas A&M were winning. Alabama was sort of just plucking grapes out of there. It's going to be a little tougher going forward, and I think we're seeing that in this class, although we are still beating them for select kids. For instance, we haven't beaten them officially yet, but Jalen Hill, the fine wide receiver from Texas who could commit to Texas, he could commit to Texas A&M. He may very well choose Alabama. You can tell Andrew Bone, Bama Insider recruiting analyst Andrew Bone and Joseph Hastings, pretty confident on Jalen Hill to Alabama right now.
Yeah, in fact, I'm going to talk about some more recruiting nuggets from Andrew Bone, but let's stick right there. Jalen Hill, I know you love him. I saw your little talk about it on 3, and you were like, hey, this guy's a dude, and it would be fantastic. And look, here's the other thing. This is going to tie in, but not necessarily to the Alabama-Texas thing. I saw a stat today where Bryce Young threw his 50-something touchdown pass in Alabama history, or 60th or something like that, right? And he did it in 598 attempts, somebody said. Tua did the same number of touchdown passes in like 403 attempts. Okay,
wow.
So the first thought is, wow, how much better is Tua than Bryce Young, right? But honestly, I started thinking about this on the way back from a doctor's appointment. I mean, that tweet just stuck out in my head, and I was like, it should be noted, Tua was throwing to an eventual Heisman Trophy winner and 4 first-round picks, along with a first-round tight end in Irv Smith. He was throwing to 5 first-rounders at some point. I would argue that Bryce Young, the best receiver that Bryce Young has been throwing to, Jamison Williams, was better than Irv Smith, but not as good as Waddle, not as good as Ruggs, not as good as Judy, not as good as Devontae Smith. Am I crazy? And so what I'm saying is, I would also say Tua had a better offensive line. I don't think there's any doubt Tua's offensive line won the Joe Moore Award. Tua had a better running back in Najee Harris. Again, I don't think there's any doubt that Tua had the better running back. Point, and Josh Jacobs, by the way, and Damian Harris, by the way. I mean, he had some dudes. So, so I think that that's kind of an unfair comparison. Even though Alabama's got studs at wide receiver, we like these guys. I mean, and I like Trayshawn Holden a lot. I like Jermaine Burton a lot. But would Trayshawn or Jermaine Burton take the place of Waddle, Judy, Ruggs, or Devontae Smith? I don't think so.
They would not. They would not. I don't think J-Mo is better than Devontae or Waddle. I would, if I'm ranking just those five, I would go Devontae 1, Waddle 2, Jamo 3, Judy 4, Ruggs 5, which is amazing to rank Ruggs 5th in anything. But I would have Jamo ahead of Judy.
Of Judy?
And Ruggs.
Oof.
I know. Well,
God, I mean, I like him. Okay.
You're talking about 5 top 20 picks. I mean, I think if you talk to 5 different people, you're going to see 5 different orders. But that's the order I'd put them in. I'm not claiming that the patent on hey, that's exactly right. I realize that's going to be argumentative, period. I need Nick Saban's opinion, but I bet he's never answering that. But
he's not answering that.
I bet he's not answering that. But and he doesn't have to. But Jamo's one of those guys. I would even argue Mechie is probably not one of those guys, but damn close. He's just off those guys. Now the thing is, Jermaine Burton appears to be our best receiver this year. Right now, I'm not even going to say Jermaine Mechie. Right now.
Agreed.
Now, I'm saying that the way I am because by the end of this season, I may change my mind. I think Burton can play his way into that. He can play his way into Mechie. I don't know that he can play his way into that other group. We'll see. I want to say the jury's out on Burton. Let's see. But it's a great point about how Bryce, even this year in particular, doesn't have those guys. He might, but they're all young. Maybe down the road, Prentice is one of those dudes. Emerson is one of those dudes, road. But they're not that way now. They're not Heisman first round guys, now.
I'll tell you something else. I rewatched the game last night, and one thing I noticed, Bryce had a overthrow on Jermaine Burton when Burton had 2 or 3 yards on his man. And my first thought was Jameson Williams catches that, and it's not even close. I mean, I was thinking that's kind of the drop-off between number 1 receivers this year. Not that Jermaine Burton's not good. I don't want people to think that. People tend to look at this thing in such a black and white. There are levels here. I'm just saying Jamo is like super duper ultra. You make Usain Bolt fast, and Jermaine Burton is a very good receiver, but he doesn't have Jamo speed. But who does? All right, Jimmy, I want to go ahead now and tell everybody about.
Good. No, go ahead.
You know what?
We'll be back. Well, I was going to say I know that play really well, and it's a good example of when I said I've seen Bryce have better nights throwing the ball. I'm talking about that play. That was not Bryce-like to miss that throw. It was a touchdown.
Agreed.
And I bet Bryce, I'm not criticizing him because, you're never going to criticize. You're never going to be perfect, or I don't expect perfection. But you know who does? Bryce. So I bet he really beat himself up when he watched that tape back.
Let me tell everybody about BetOnline.net. It's your number 1 source for all your college and pro betting needs and sports info this season. Find all the latest football developments, game matchup news, and podcasts, including this year's opening week games. BetOnline is also your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MLB, MMA, golf, and boxing. Head to the website there, use your mobile device, learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, Jimmy, I want to talk a little recruiting from our main man, Andrew Bone here. He had some nice little quick hitters. You've already covered Andrew Hill. That was the first one he actually talked about. He talked about Tony Mitchell taking an unofficial to Alabama. Jaleel Hurley was the only in-state commitment who didn't attend this last game. I think that's a very good sign. And he also talked, one other thing he brought up was Quay Russell and James Smith. They took an unofficial to Auburn. Now, here's the thing. Look, I don't think they're going to end up at Auburn. I'm sure you don't think they're going to end up at Auburn. But Andrew Bone says, I know most probably don't give Auburn much of a chance, but they have high interest. Russell grew up an Auburn fan. I think the dysfunction on the Plains is cause for concerns for many recruits and why the Tigers currently rank number 12 in the SEC, according to On3 Sports. Auburn typically surprises everyone when nobody talks about them. I don't see Russell Smith going to Auburn, but they have a much better than expected season. It could make things interesting. Now, again, I don't think those two end up at Auburn. I feel more confident than ever before they end up at Alabama, frankly, after talking to a couple of folks. And I got to leave that right there. Just trust me. I do feel more comfortable. But I just found it interesting. They did go to Auburn, and if Auburn were to get those two, it could certainly change the perception of how their recruiting is going.
In this era of NIL deals, if someone, you can't just look at a program and say they're a mess or they're losing, so they have no chance. Everybody's getting in the NIL era. Everybody, because we all know what talks, right? And that talks. And hey, here's a good pitch. More money than anywhere else, and you're an immediate starter. And when you're an immediate true freshman starter, who knows what deals are out there for you? That's a heck of a pitch, in this age and this landscape. And that's why I think Rousseau and Smith are going to Alabama. I do. That's my projection. Rousseau and Smith to Alabama today. But that's why Bone is saying what he's saying. And I'm not speaking for him. I don't know exactly, but that's my view of it. Is you better not say they're not going to Auburn, zero chance, because if you're saying that, then you're not understanding what the landscape is. They could end up at Auburn because we know what makes the world go around.
Yeah, we sure do. And a lot of times it's wearing a sundress at the University of Alabama on a fall Saturday. Da-dun-sh. Women make the world go around. Huh?
You can't hear me?
I don't know. Did you? Yeah, I can hear you.
You can't hear me?
I can.
Go somewhere.
All right. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take Jimmy out of the picture for a second. He is having some obvious issues when it comes to his phone. Hopefully, these issues weren't translating over to issues with you're having with me. However, that's going to do it for today's podcast. When we come back tomorrow, we will be having our prediction show. It's going to be a lot of fun. Second weekend of the season, I should say. So we'll be talking about that when we come back. See you guys tomorrow, and roll tide.